Everyone thinks I became strong through some secret technique, some hidden power, some dramatic breakthrough moment. They're wrong. Dead wrong. I became the strongest through the most boring thing imaginable. Doing the same simple routine every single day for 3 years straight. 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, 10-kilometer run. Every day, no exceptions. People laugh when I tell them this. They say it's too simple, too basic, that there must be more to it. But that's exactly why they'll never reach their potential. They're looking for shortcuts to mastery instead of committing to the process. Your greatest enemy isn't lack of talent or resources. It's your own impatience with the improvement process.
Perfection isn't about having flawless technique from the start. It's about identifying every single weakness in your form and systematically destroying each one through targeted practice. When I train, I'm not just going through the motions. I'm analyzing every movement, every muscle contraction, every inefficiency in my technique. Each training session is an investigation into how I can become even 1% better than yesterday. Most people practice their strengths because it feels good to do what you're already good at. But real improvement comes from obsessing over your weaknesses until they become strengths too. I spend hours perfecting movements that others would consider good enough. Because good enough is the enemy of excellence, and excellence is the enemy of mastery.
True mastery is developed in absolute privacy. While others showcase their incomplete skills seeking validation, I perfect my techniques in complete isolation, where there's no pressure to perform, no audience to impress, no timeline to meet, except my own. The most powerful abilities are refined through thousands of repetitions that nobody witnesses. Each movement practiced until it becomes instinctive. Each strategy tested until it becomes flawless. Each weakness addressed until it becomes strength. Most people practice until they get it right once. Masters practice until they can't get it wrong. There's a fundamental difference between demonstrating competence and achieving true mastery. In the shadows, perfection isn't about meeting other standards. It's about exceeding your own.
Listen. Most people give up on improvement the moment it stops feeling easy. They want progress without frustration, mastery without struggle, perfection without the pain of constantly confronting their limitations. But here's what I learned. Every time you feel like you've hit a wall, every time your technique feels stuck, every time improvement seems impossible, that's exactly when real growth begins. Those moments of struggle aren't obstacles to perfection. They are the path to perfection. You think my shadow techniques developed overnight? Hell no. I spent months failing at basic manipulations, getting frustrated with my lack of control, wanting to quit every time my shadows wouldn't respond the way I needed them to. But persistence through frustration is what separates those who achieve mastery from those who settle for good enough.
You know what separates champions from everyone else? Champions fall in love with the process of getting better, not just the idea of being better. When I first stepped onto that field at Blue Lock, I was average at everything, but I discovered something that changed my entire trajectory. I became obsessed with analyzing my own performance. Every mistake became data. Every failure became information about what to improve next. While others were focused on looking good, I was focused on getting good. While they avoided situations where they might fail, I actively sought them out because failure was showing me exactly where my limits were. You can't improve what you don't measure. You can't perfect what you don't practice. And you can't master what you're not willing to fail at repeatedly.
Here's what nobody wants to hear about perfection. It's boring. Really boring. It's doing the same thing over and over again, when you'd rather be doing literally anything else. Day 500 of the same routine? Boring. Day 800? Still boring. Day 1000? You guessed it. Boring as hell. But you know what's not boring? Being so good at something that you make the impossible look effortless. Most people quit pursuing perfection because they mistake boredom for lack of progress. They think if it's not exciting, if it's not constantly challenging, if it's not giving them new feelings every day, then it must not be working. But perfection is found in the repetition they're running from, in the consistency they find unbearable, in the dedication that feels monotonous.
You want to know the difference between someone who trains and someone who masters? The person who trains stops when they get tired. The master stops when they get it right. Every single movement in my arsenal has been refined through thousands of repetitions. Not because I enjoyed doing the same thing over and over, but because I understood that perfect execution under pressure only comes from perfect practice in preparation. Most people practice until they can do something correctly once. Then they move on, thinking they've mastered it. But real mastery means you can execute flawlessly when you're exhausted, when you're stressed, when everything is on the line. That level of reliability only comes from honing each technique until it's programmed into your muscle memory so deeply that your body can perform it without your mind's interference.
Most people's idea of improvement is adding more techniques, learning more skills, accumulating more knowledge. But true mastery often means doing less, not more. Refining what you have until each element is absolutely perfect. I've spent years perfecting a handful of core abilities rather than collecting dozens of mediocre ones. While others chase the newest methods, I'm honing my fundamentals to levels they can't comprehend. There's profound power in taking something simple and executing it with such precision that it becomes unstoppable. One perfectly mastered technique is worth more than 100 half-learned skills. The world is full of people who know a little about everything and a lot about nothing. But mastery comes from choosing your focus and diving so deep that you discover possibilities others never imagined.
Here's what I realized about continuous improvement. It's not about dramatic transformations or breakthrough moments. It's about making tiny adjustments every single day that compound into something extraordinary over time. Every training session, I'm not trying to revolutionize my technique. I'm trying to improve it by just 1%. Better shadow control, faster reaction time, more precise manipulation. These small improvements seem insignificant in the moment, but they accumulate into massive advantages over months and years. Most people get frustrated because they want to see major progress immediately. They train for a week and expect to see dramatic results. But real improvement is often invisible day to day, and only becomes obvious when you look back over extended periods. Trust the process of small, consistent improvements. They're building something powerful, even when you can't see it yet.
The hunger for improvement has to come from within. You can't rely on coaches, teammates, or external motivation to push you toward perfection. At some point, it becomes a personal obsession with being better today than you were yesterday. I developed this internal drive where every missed shot, every poor decision, every moment where I could have performed better became fuel for my next training session. Not because I was beating myself up, but because I genuinely got excited about having specific things to work on. Most people see mistakes as failures. I learned to see them as roadmaps, showing me exactly where to focus my improvement efforts. Each error was pointing me toward my next breakthrough. When improvement becomes internally motivated rather than externally driven, you become unstoppable, because your commitment doesn't depend on anyone else's standards or expectations.
The thing about perfection is that it's not a destination you reach. It's a standard you maintain. Every single day, you either move closer to your potential or further away from it. There's no neutral ground. Even after achieving what others call peak strength, I still do my routine. Not because I need to anymore, but because the discipline that got me here is the same discipline that keeps me here. Most people think once you reach a certain level, you can coast. That's exactly when you start declining. Perfection requires the same dedication to maintain as it did to achieve. The moment you think you've made it and can relax your standards is the moment you begin losing everything you worked to build. Excellence is a daily commitment, not a one-time achievement.
Real improvement happens when you stop comparing yourself to others and start competing with the version of yourself from yesterday. Every training session becomes about surpassing your previous limits, not proving you're better than someone else. When I analyze my performance, I'm not looking at what my opponents can do. I'm examining what I couldn't do yesterday that I can do today. What technique was sloppy that's now clean? What weakness existed that's now been addressed? This internal competition creates sustainable motivation because your progress isn't dependent on external factors. You're not waiting for others to get weaker. You're actively becoming stronger. The most dangerous fighters aren't those comparing themselves to their competition. They're the ones who've made improvement a personal obsession that has nothing to do with anyone else's standards.
The pursuit of perfection requires strategic patience. Most people want immediate results from their efforts, but true mastery unfolds over years, not weeks or months. I've spent countless hours refining techniques that others would consider already good enough. But good enough is the enemy of excellence. And excellence is what separates the truly powerful from the merely competent. Each day of dedicated practice might only yield microscopic improvements, but these small gains compound exponentially over time. What seems like an imperceptible advancement today becomes an insurmountable advantage tomorrow. The ability to delay gratification, to work for long-term mastery rather than short-term satisfaction, is what distinguishes those who achieve their potential from those who settle for mediocrity.
Perfection isn't about eliminating all mistakes. It's about reducing them systematically until they become rare exceptions rather than common occurrences. When I first started developing my shadow techniques, I failed constantly. My shadows wouldn't respond properly.
My timing was off. My precision was terrible. But instead of getting frustrated and giving up, I started cataloging my errors. What specific conditions led to poor shadow control? What mental state affected my timing? What physical factors influenced my precision? By treating mistakes as data rather than failures, I could address each issue systematically. This analytical approach to improvement transforms frustration into curiosity. Instead of being disappointed by imperfect performance, you become fascinated by the puzzle of how to optimize it further.
Here's the truth about dedication to continuous improvement. It's not about being perfect. It's about being consistent. Perfect days don't create perfect results. Consistent days do. There were days during my training when I felt terrible, when my form was off, when everything felt harder than it should have been. But I showed up anyway. Not because I felt motivated, but because the commitment was bigger than my feelings. The strength you build by training on the days you don't want to train is different from the strength you build on good days. It's the strength of character that makes everything else possible. Most people only work on themselves when they feel inspired. But inspiration is unreliable. Dedication works regardless of how you feel. And that's what makes it unstoppable.